Today, we discuss Miro. Listen, when it comes to running client workshops, the dream, of course, is to get those creative juices flowing, right? But typically what ends up happening is thousands of hours get wasted because of poorly facilitated meetings. So I have Maya with me today. She's a consultant who runs Fortune 100 workshops, from leadership training to team building, and she has the insider tip on what makes things work. Maya?
Thank you, Jason. I've been doing this a long time. My number one tip is to bring everyone into that visual collaboration platform. So personally, I use Miro, and it's completely changed how I interact with the room. You have to give people a way to feel like they're in the room even when they're not. That's something you can do easily in Miro. Otherwise, they've seen the same slides and format 1,000 times.
Falling asleep, eyes glazing over, yawns, all that.
Exactly. When people follow me on the Miro board, everyone is literally going on a journey with me. We're adding thoughts, we're reacting, and we're voting for the best ideas. It's great.
Connective magic. I like it. That's MIRO.com.
Get the home field advantage every time with Fairfield by Marriott, official hotel partner of the NCAA. Whether you're a student athlete working toward your championship dreams or your team's biggest fan, Fairfield by Marriott has everything you need to get ready for game day. From comfortable guest rooms to complimentary hot breakfast, Fairfield is part of the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio of hotels and official hotel partner of the NCAA. Visit fairfield.marriott.com to book your next game day stay.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Corient. Corient provides wealth management services centered around you. They focus on exceeding expectations, simplifying lives, and establishing legacies that last for generations. Leverage their exclusive network of experts to help achieve your personal and professional financial goals. As one of the largest integrated fee-only registered investment advisors in the U.S., Corient has experienced teams who can craft custom solutions designed to help you reach your financial goals, no matter how complex. Real wealth requires real solutions. Connect to a wealth advisor today at Corient.com.
The United States Border Patrol has exciting and rewarding career opportunities with the nation's largest law enforcement organization. Border Patrol agents enjoy great pay, outstanding federal benefits, and up to $20,000 in recruitment incentives for newly appointed agents. If you are looking for a way to serve something greater than yourself, consider the United States Border Patrol. Learn more online at cbp.gov/careers/USBP. That's cbp.gov/careers/USBP.
Welcome into The Verge, a show which covers the Baltimore Orioles minor leagues. The Verge is part of BSL Radio. Baltimore Sports and Life is dedicated to analysis and discussion on the Orioles, Baltimore Ravens, and the University of Maryland. The site has a team of writers providing coverage of those teams and houses live streaming content weekly. Join the conversations at the message board, like BSL on Facebook, and follow BSL on Twitter.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts and Q&A lets us be more creative on another level. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Hello, everyone. This is episode 3 of Between the Numbers, and today we're going to be doing a trade deadline overview. Some quick thoughts on the trade deadline. I think the Orioles did a really good job. I think we got good value in terms of acquiring 2 impact players who I think will contribute significantly down the stretch. 2 players who I also think have some upside left in them. And I think we also didn't have to give up any huge prospects. That's not any slight on the prospects that we did keep up. I think there's some talented guys in there, and I think maybe even all of them will make major league appearances over the course of their career. But rather, it's just to say that I think Jack Flaherty and Shintaro Fujinami are going to be impactful down the stretch. Quick rundown. First, going to look at Jack Flaherty and Shintaro Fujinami. Then going to look at the guys we gave up to get them. So that would be Prieto, Rom, Showalter, and Easton Lucas. And lastly, going to be looking at kind of based on Driveline research, the dollar value that we expect to be acquiring compared to the dollar value that we are giving up in the prospects that we traded. Yeah, I think that's going to be kind of an interesting episode, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Without further ado, want to get into Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty obviously has been in the big leagues for a long time. He is a rental acquisition, which means he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. He has in the past pitched like an ace, but that now has been 4 or 5 years since that peak. He has been pitching really, really well for the past 2.5 months or so. Since May 15th, he's got a 3.3 ERA, a 3.28 FIP. And honestly, that's a really impressive stretch, which we definitely hope will continue in his time as an Oriole. During that stretch, I will note his strikeout minus walk rate is less than 15%. So, it isn't entirely, sunshine and rainbows with Jack Flaherty through that stretch. I think, if there weren't any at least yellow flags that performance would regress a bit, I think he would have cost a lot more. However, I do think there is upside in his arm, and I think the Orioles could be the right team to get him to prolong that stretch through the season and maybe just make that his norm, kind of returning to his previous heights. But we will see. First, just a quick Stuff Plus overview. He kind of rates out as an average major league starter. He's got 94 Stuff Plus, 97 Location Plus, and a 99 Pitching Plus. He has no real standout pitches in the model. He has a slightly above average fastball, which is always a good building block to start from with a starting pitcher. But besides that, his sinker, cutter, slider, changeup, and knuckle curve all rank as below average or average. However, I will note that I think the Stuff Plus model really underrates him. And I think this is for 2 reasons. The Stuff Plus model will give a pitch its grade based on what it's classified as. And I think this actually harms Jack Flaherty because his cutter, it's more of a hard slider than it really is a cutter. And we'll dive deep into that. But I think that kind of throws off what his Stuff Plus should really be. And I also think, with some tweaks to his pitch mix and his pitch usage, that Stuff Plus score would also go up. As always, with a machine learning model like Stuff Plus, you always got to look deeper. It's a useful tool, but you also got to have a bit of a discerning eye with. So, I think I mentioned earlier that Jack Flaherty's a guy with some upside, and the reason I believe that is because I think there are tweaks to be made with his approach against left-handed hitters, which will go a long way. He has been getting crushed by lefties this season, and even just looking at what his arsenal has, I think that can kind of make sense. You see that he's got a poor changeup, and then all his other weapons kind of move into lefties. I think it makes sense why he would be really successful against righties. He throws a four-seam, a cutter, a slider, a curveball, and a sinker against righties. So all those, either move away from righties or, with the sinker makes for a really uncomfortable jammed at bat. And then the four-seamer, it actually plays above average to both lefties and righties. But point being, his arsenal is well suited to face righties. He does not throw the changeup very much against lefties, which that's the first change I think we could see. And we saw that in his first start with the Orioles. He threw the changeup 15% of the time against lefties in his start against the Blue Jays. With the Cardinals, he had only thrown it about 5% of the time to lefties. The second change is that I think the Orioles are going to change how Flaherty uses one of the cutter or the slider against lefties. Right now, we've seen him throw both the cutter and the slider, at least throughout his time with the Cardinals, really low and inside to lefties. So trying to get those swings and misses over the top. However, that approach hasn't been working. And I think we can look at two pitchers and their approaches against lefties to see what the Orioles might want to do. First, I think we can look at the Orioles themselves. There's a guy on the Orioles who throws a cutter slider who doesn't have many weapons against lefties. His name is Dean Kramer. And what the Orioles have done with Dean is they've just told him, hey, throw that cutter slider on the outside half of the plate and just try to get it in for strikes. Get strikes, get soft contact on it. It won't be an out pitch by any means, but it'll help you get in the count and get ahead. And that's actually been really effective for Dean. I think we could see Flaherty do that. The other guy that we can look at is, well, what does Jack Flaherty's cutter compare most closely to? That would be Johan Oviedo's slider. And Johan Oviedo throws it 33% of the time to lefties. And it has an above average WOBA of 307 against lefties for him. So I think we can look at how Johan Oviedo uses his slider, and maybe from there we can, say how he should use that cutter. Flaherty, for anyone wondering, throws the cutter 21% of the time against lefties, and it has a 416 WOBA, which is terrible. Also, I will note, going back to what I was talking about, Stuff Plus, let's say Flaherty's cutter was relabeled as a slider. The Stuff Plus on that pitch, just based on, Johan Oviedo's slider, would be about 105. So that would give him another above average pitch in the Stuff Plus model. So that was just an interesting little quirk. So, yeah. Point being, Jack Flaherty throws what I believe to be a slider cutter that has a lot of potential. Moving on, just looking at how Johan Oviedo uses the pitch, what we see is that Oviedo tries to just, throw it either on the outside half of the plate or keep it below the zone. Throughout the season, with the Cardinals at least, what we've seen Flaherty do with the cutter is throw it up and throw it deep inside to lefties. So I think it would be worth for both Flaherty and the Orioles to explore maybe an approach where that either the cutter, probably the cutter, or maybe the slider will be getting thrown on the outside half of the plate, just, really avoiding overlap where he throws his other, whether it be where he throws his slider, essentially. I think it would be nice to have some differentiation. Right now he's throwing both the cutter and slider inside. I think it would be good to throw one outside and throw one inside. Johan Oviedo has seen a lot of success with that approach. Dean Kramer has seen success with that approach. I think Jack Flaherty could see success with that approach. Couple other notes on Jack Flaherty. First is, a tweet that I think a lot of us saw where, Sarah's just noted how important velocity is to Flaherty, how much better he performs when he's throwing harder. So what that tweet said, for anybody listening that didn't see it, is in starts where Jack Flaherty averaged 93.9 miles per hour or better, he gave up 5 earned runs in 25 innings pitched. In all other starts, he pitched 85 innings with 49 earned runs. Velo matters a lot. I think that applies to most pitchers, and it certainly applies to Flaherty. I also wanted to point out that Jack Flaherty is an excellent acquisition in the sense that he not only helps to strengthen the Orioles' rotation in terms of, guys are, starting to show signs of fatigue and whatnot, but he also strengthens the rotation in the area that they are weakest in. That is providing shutdown starts. And what I define as a shutdown start is going 5+ innings and allowing 1 run or fewer. And so just looking at, the Orioles rotation, this might be a little bit outdated, as I haven't updated the numbers in about a month or so, but 28% of the time, Orioles starters give shutdown performances. And the major league average is about 30% of the time. Jack Flaherty does it 43% of the time. That's a really impactful arm to add to the rotation. Moving on to Fujinami, I think fewer notes on him. I think the Orioles have already gotten to work on him. They've changed his pitch usage pretty significantly. But just a quick overview on his approach. He's a fastball splitter guy against lefties and a fastball cutter guy against righties. In terms of stuff plus, since June 1st, he's in the upper 25% of relievers in stuff plus with 116. The fastball and splitter grade out as above average pitches, and the cutter is an average pitch. I wouldn't be surprised if Fujinami was a reverse splits guy. I actually didn't check if he was or wasn't, but just based on the fact that he's got 2 above average offerings against lefties. A quick look at how his pitch usage has changed with the Orioles. We see that he's been using the 4-seam fastball a lot less. He is using the cutter and the splitter more. Especially, we're seeing an increased usage of the cutter against righties, which has been pretty effective for him. I know he's had a couple of rough outings, but I think we're seeing that there's a lot of upside in his arm. I think this, from the Orioles' perspective, you acquired a guy who I think at worst is going to be an electric middle reliever. And at best, you acquired a guy who's got the upside of becoming a high leverage guy. And, obviously we'll see how that develops, but I think it's a pretty low risk, high reward type of trade. And I think one of the most underrated moves in the entire trade deadline by any major league team. But that might be me getting overly excited. In any case, I think he's going to be an awesome arm to have in the Orioles staff. He is also a guy who has shown no signs of pitcher fatigue. So going back to the previous episode of Between the Numbers, for anybody that listened and might have concerns about that, this is a kind of a fresh arm who is going to be really helpful to have for the remaining 2 months. Moving on to the guys we gave up. First guy is going to be Cesar Prieto. Now, this is a guy who I think is almost certainly going to have some form of a major league career. But I think it's a career with a relatively low ceiling. When looking at minor league players who, kind of match his profile, here I looked at, players in AAA who were 24, had an ISO under 170, which is just kind of, we're kind of using it to proxy his power level, and a strikeout rate less than 10%. You find that there are not a lot of great outcomes. You see guys that wind up having major league careers, like long major league careers, and a lot of guys that make major league appearances for, a year or 2 year or a few years, but no real superstar players. So, that kind of goes to show that Cesar Prieto at best is going to be kind of a fringe average starter for a team. Some of the guys that, stand out that have had major league careers on the list that match this criteria: Adam Frazier of the Baltimore Orioles right now, Jurickson Profar, Didi Gregorius being the best outcome of them all. We also see Breivik Valera, old friend from the Manny Machado trade. And you see, a whole list of guys who have had up-down careers or just have occasionally made major league appearances, like Christian Colon, J.D. Shuck, Johnny Javatella, and whatnot. Now, just to further emphasize this kind of finding that Prieto is kind of a low ceiling guy, we can also just say, what if he had no drop off from AAA to the major leagues, which is honestly kind of a very unlikely hypothetical. But let's say, all right, players with less than a 10% strikeout rate. In this case, I did an ISO less than 0.16. And then we also added in the fact that, Prieto is a guy who smashes the ball into the ground a lot. So guys who have a ground ball rate of over 48%, which would actually be lower than Prieto's current rate at AAA, which has been, a little bit over 48%. What we see there is, guys like Andrelton Simmons a whole lot, Jose Iglesias, David Fletcher in some of his worst seasons. So you're seeing that, he is likely to be a below average major league bat just based on historical track record of players with similar profiles. Though he might occasionally have, a big season where his WRC plus is slightly above league average. And again, that's the best outcome. This is a valuable guy to have in an organization. He's a great up-down guy to have. And honestly, even a guy that's just handy, if there's a season where you need to plug a hole in the middle infield, you give him a starting job and he'll probably, be kind of a one WAR player or something along those lines. Again, this is a valuable player, but not someone that really projects as an impact everyday player. And because of his poor defense, probably not a regular big league roster guy, not even as a bench guy. Drew Rom. I am a big fan of Drew Rom, but I also think this is a guy who had a somewhat limited ceiling. Just looking at his stuff plus, he throws a sweeper, a four-seamer, a sinker, and a splitter. Now, all of those pitches grade out as about league average, which bodes well for his future as a major league arm. However, he has terrible, and I mean terrible, location plus grades on his secondaries that aren't his fastballs. So his sweeper has a location plus of 93, which is really bad. His splitter has a location plus of 80, which is pretty much unusable. And so this probably hints at why you see Drew Rom throw almost 70% fastballs, whether it's the four-seamer or the sinker, throughout his time in AAA. I think, based on this, I think there's limited upside with Rom. I think you could see him as a spot starter who comes up every now and then. And I also think his, long-term role in the big leagues could be, maybe being a lefty one-out guy, a loogie, because he throws the sweeper, which is usable. He doesn't command it very well, but it's usable. And he also has a sinker, which is a great pitch to have against same-handed batters, and the four-seamer, which will play, honestly, against both lefties and righties. So he's got, 3 pitches to attack lefties with. You change that over to righties, he's pretty much only got his four-seamer because the splitter isn't really usable, and opposite-handed hitters tend to crush sinkers. And sweepers also tend to get crushed by opposite-handed hitters. So you're looking at a guy who's going to be better against lefties. The secondaries need a lot of work in terms of command. And yeah, I mean, again, this is a valuable organization arm. He, it's a guy who will throw innings out of your bullpen, who will make the occasional spot start. It's valuable, but it has limited ceiling. Another note, there are very few guys who average below 92 miles per hour on their fastball in the big leagues. There are no guys that average below 92 miles per hour on their fastball and have bad secondaries. And there are no guys that throw a 92 mile per hour fastball and throw the fastball 70% of the time. So his value is really being a depth guy as it stands right now. Obviously, I'm really rooting for him, and I hope he can sort out the command on the secondaries. But as he is right now, he kind of looks like a depth arm. Moving on to the next guy, Zach Showalter. I think he was, he might seem like a throw-in, but I actually think he is the centerpiece of the trade. He's the highest reward or the highest upside guy in the trade. Just a quick look at guys who have, done what he's done in the minor leagues. So we're looking at 19-year-old players with, striking out over 25% of the hitters in low A, who have ground ball rates of over 40%. And then we, just some other criteria to kind of try and narrow down our pool to maybe other players that have done similar things. Also, players that are, pitchers that have walked more than 10% of batters and that also have a strikeout minus walk rate greater than 15%. We see that there's a list of mixed outcomes. And what you see here, you find guys like Lance McCullers Jr., Michael Kopech, Mick Abel, Anthony Solomedo, guys that are honestly pretty exciting, guys that have that look like they'll be solid major league starters or have shown that they are solid major league starters. However, in that list, you also see a ton of guys that didn't pan out. You see Marcos Duplant, you see Francisco Morales, you see Sean Reed Foley, you see Jackson. Jackson Flaherty is a guy from this year, so don't mind that. You see Antonio Cruz from 2011. So there's a lot of guys who don't pan out. Now, obviously, there's huge upside. I think just being on a list like this kind of shows that it's not, what he's done is not something that many pitchers have been able to do. Even though it's low A ball, even though we're looking at Delmarva. However, I think in terms of looking at the team context, the Orioles are willing to give up the high upside of Showalter, because if you look at every starter that panned out here, so Ian Anderson, Michael Kopech, and Lance McCullers Jr., they all took at least 2 more years to debut, and usually way more than 2 years to really establish themselves as solid major league starters. Looking at Michael Kopech, he didn't establish himself as a major league starter until 2022. He showed up on this list in 2015. So, I think the Orioles are willing to when you account for how long it would take for Showalter to become an impact starter and how long it would take for him to debut, I think the Orioles were willing to make that trade. It is also worth noting there's another Oriole pitcher that shows up on this list from this year, and that's Yaki Rivera. So keep a lookout on that guy. He does seem like he's more of a reliever look, but still, it's cool that he showed up on that list. Last guy that we're going to look at, Easton Lucas. Obviously, his value is being a depth guy. He's a guy, his value comes from his minor league options, the fact that he can be called up and down and just cover innings in a bullpen for a rebuilding team. I think he's got upside of maybe a league average-ish middle reliever at best, by Stuff Plus. He's got kind of a slightly above average slider, kind of a league average sinker, fringe average fastball, and a below average changeup, though it is worth noting that changeups are notoriously difficult for a Stuff Plus model to grade accurately. He is a guy that has, league average command. And so, I think I think it's likely that he's going to make major league appearances and that he'll contribute to the A's bullpen over the next few years in some capacity. But I think more likely than not, it'll be in an up and down type of fashion. From a team context, I think the Orioles, feel comfortable with the depth of up-down guys that they have in the minor leagues right now. I mean, if the Orioles needed a minor league reliever tomorrow, I feel like you could put up Vespi or Gillespie or DL Hall if you wanted to. And that's just, the three that came from the top of my head right now. And I think there are other guys that would fit that role. Easton Lucas, if he was in the major leagues, he's got bottom 25% Stuff Plus for a reliever, and even below average for location plus grades for major league pitchers. Though I think that is heavily weighed down by the changeup. I don't actually think he's got such bad location or command. Last note is just, how did we do on these trades? How can we try and value these trades? And so what we can look at is some research done by Driveline, where they found the dollar value of prospects based on their different prospect grades. And so this is based on how much or how many wins above replacement prospects with those prospect grades produced. And so when we look at, the prospects we gave up, you have Prieto, and I'll be using Fangraph grades and kind of estimates for guys who didn't have Fangraph grades. So Prieto was a 40 future value. Driveline found that to be worth about $2 million. Rom, kind of a 35 future value guy, that's worth about $1 million. Lucas, probably similar to Rom, even though Fangraphs didn't grade him. I'll give him a 35. We'll say another $1 million worth of prospect. And then Showalter, I gave him about a 40 future value. I just used the grade that was given to him by MLB Pipeline. Don't know how Fangraphs would grade him, but we can say that's another $1 million in prospect value. So in total, we gave up $5 million worth of prospect value. And then we compare that to what we expect to get in return. Just looking at rest of season projections for Flaherty and Fujinami. Flaherty's projected for about half a win, and then Fujinami's projected for about a tenth of a win. So in total, a 0.6 WAR between the two. Using, a baseline of $9 million per WAR, that means we expect to get about $5.4 million in value from Flaherty and Fujinami rest of season, while we expect to give up about $5 million in value in the prospects we gave up for the remainder of their careers, essentially. So I think at least through this type of value or valuation, we actually did really, really well on the trades. I mean, to get, $5 million in half a season for $5 million over all the team control of these guys, it looks like we made, honestly, really great deals in terms of value. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of an interesting way of evaluating the trades. And, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think the next episode is going to be looking at what constitutes a position player core for a playoff team. And yeah, I hope you guys will give that a listen, and I'll catch you guys next time.
That'll do it for this week's episode of On the Verge. Be sure to check out our Patreon page where you can help show your support for the show and get bonus content, including monthly top 50 updates to our prospect list and daily game recaps during the season, and much, much more.
It's easy to build credit with a Chime Secured Credit Builder Visa credit card. Use it everywhere Visa credit cards are accepted. To apply, just open a Chime checking account with a qualifying direct deposit. There's no annual fee or credit check required. Get started at chime.com/build. The Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card is issued by Stride Bank N.A. member FDIC. Chime checking account and a $200 qualifying direct deposit required to apply. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply. Call 1-844-244-6363 for details. On-time payment history may have a positive impact on your credit score. Late payment may negatively impact your credit score. Results may vary.
Okay, here's how Miro works. See, it's amazing.
What's everyone doing at David's desk? Ever since marketing started using Miro's collaborative online whiteboard, he thinks all our other teams should sign up. Why? He says Miro's making his meetings disappear. And if every team gets on it, that means even less meetings. They're using Miro for brainstorms, mind maps, customer research.
So could we use Miro instead of having another 100 meetings for every round of feedback?
Yep. You can comment, react to ideas, even leave a recording on the board.
And what about presentations?
There are Miro templates for that.
How do you know so much about Miro?
I've actually been using it all along. I just used a Miro board to plan the best vacation.
Okay, I'm on board.
See how Miro users save up to 80 hours every year by meeting less and doing more. Get on board at Miro.com with 3 boards free forever. That's MIRO.com.